Hello my time travelling friends, it's Sarah, of course, the Tudor Travel Guide here, and welcome back to this month's episode of the A to Z of Tudor Places. Well, there were several contenders for this month's episode, which of course is centred on the letter T. However, I've decided that we should explore the history of one of the powerhouses of the Tudor age, and which today is near the top of the list for any Tudor time traveller who wishes to follow, or indeed in this case sleep, in the footsteps of Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII. I am of course talking about Thornbury Castle, which is in the southeast Cotswolds and is one of the few Tudor buildings which has been turned into a luxury hotel, and if you are lucky, you can, as I hinted at, sleep in the very bedroom used by Henry VIII during the momentous and historic 1535 progress. But before we talk more about Thornbury and its history, as ever, I just wanted to say that if you're enjoying this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the little alert bell next to it to ensure that you're the first to hear of any new videos as they go live. And you might also note my QR code for Instagram if you want to follow me on my Tudor road trips as I travel and gather content for my podcasts and videos. Then the best place to do that is on Instagram. So you can follow me and find me and follow me at the Tudor Travel Guide. Just simply point the camera on your mobile phone at the QR code and that should take you directly to my homepage on Instagram, and I'll see you there. Okay, let's get back to the history of Thornbury Castle. Well, Thornbury was once owned by one of the most powerful aristocrats of the Tudor age, Edward Stafford, the third Duke of Buckingham. He set about building a large double courtyard mansion on the site of an earlier manor house, and that was surrounded by a park of around 1,000 acres. And if you don't know about the lineage of Edward Stafford, then let me fill you in on the gossip because it's quite interesting. He was the eldest son of the second Duke of Buckingham and Catherine Woodville. Through his mother, he was the nephew of King Edward IV, and on his father's side, he was descended from one of the sons of Edward III. Thus, interestingly, he had both Plantagenet and Yorkist blood running through his veins. Edward Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, also had close ties to the Tudor dynasty, for after his father died, his mother Catherine Woodville married Jasper Tudor, who was of course the much loved uncle of Henry VII, and the couple would reside at Thornbury, where Jasper Tudor died in 1495. Now, back to our story in Edward Stafford, third Duke of Buckingham. Well, he was known as Proud Buckingham because he made much of his status and legitimate claims to the throne. His plans at Thornbury were to build a grand mansion which rivaled perhaps the greatest and well-known house of the age, Hampton Court Palace. Unfortunately for Edward, his proximity to the throne engendered great suspicion in a paranoid Henry VIII, and he was eventually arrested and accused of treason and beheaded on Tower Hill in 1521, before he'd had chance to complete his mansion at Thornbury. As usual though, upon his attainder, Thornbury Castle was surrendered to the crown, and so it became property of the king. And therefore, a little like Sudeley in our last A to Z, it's not surprising that the king, Henry VIII, and Anne Boleyn included Thornbury in the 1535 progress, which saw them travel the length of the Cotswolds from Sudeley in the north to Thornbury Castle in the south. And in fact, the couple would spend a week at Thornbury from the 14th of August 1535 before travelling on to their next destination, Acton Court. Now, while Thornbury is in fact called a castle, do not be fooled, for this was no drafty medieval castle. Thornbury in its day reflected a new era in the design of aristocratic houses. In fact, Thornbury was a palatial manor house designed for comfort and to reflect the Duke of Buckingham's noble blood. Now, in terms of its layout, as I've already mentioned, the house was comprised of 2 courtyards. So it was a double courtyard house with an outer base court and a smaller inner courtyard, around which all the privy lodgings and the grand ceremonial and public chambers were arranged. Now, the whole complex was entered by a fashionable outer gatehouse, and the spacious base court was the first of the 2 aforementioned courtyards, and it contained the stable range and also 2 partially built ranges that had been designed to accommodate visitors and around the up to 500 or so staff who would attend upon the Duke and Duchess and who kept the house running. And to give you an idea of size, base court covered about 2.5 acres and then led through into the inner courtyard via what was an incomplete inner gatehouse, which is positioned in the centre of the West Range. Now, it's important to remember that Edward Stafford never got to complete his building project at Thornbury, as I mentioned previously. And so today, when you visit, what you see is a complete southwest tower and part of the West Range, but his grand plans for building a 4-storey gatehouse flanked by 2 4-storey towers and 2 intermediate turrets never materialised. And so when you visit, you might think that somehow the house has fallen into some ruin over the centuries, but in fact, you are seeing a building that was only ever partially constructed, which is quite unusual. Anyway, the inner gatehouse that does still stand, although, as I say, only up to 2 stories, leaves us in no question about the man responsible for constructing this beautiful building. A carved inscription above the gateway of the inner gatehouse reads thus: "This gate was begun in the year of our Lord, 1511, the 2nd year of the reign of King Henry VIII, by me, Edward, Duke of Buckingham, Earl of Hertford, Stafford and Northampton. Doreen Savant." By the way, that is the Duke's motto in Latin. I hope I've pronounced it okay. Doreen Savant means from now on, henceforth or hereafter. And in fact, at the time, was interpreted by some as signifying Buckingham's ambition for the throne. So, once you pass under the inner gatehouse, you are entering what was once Buckingham's inner courtyard. Directly in front of you would have been the Great Hall and the chapel beyond that. Both of those are sadly lost to time. But on your right, what does survive is the rather spectacular range that once comprised the privy lodgings of the Duke and Duchess, with the Duke's apartments on the upper floor and the Duchess's on the ground floor. And by the way, here's another fun fact. Buckingham's wife was Eleanor Percy, and she was the aunt of Henry Percy, who, of course, had once been romantically linked to Anne Boleyn. It's good to make those connections, don't you think? Okay, so it was in these very same apartments that Anne and Henry stayed during their visit in 1535. And the rooms in which they were lodged were lit by magnificent oriel windows, and those on the first floor, the most prestigious suite in the house, being more intricate than the ones below, more grand, and you will see that when you visit today. Now, those suites overlooked the privy gardens, again, as you might suspect, the best views, and they were described by Henry VIII's commissioners as being surrounded on 3 sides by a goodly gallery, accessible from the rooms at either end of the Duke's suite. And those galleries consisted of a loggia on the ground floor and a gallery built of timber and covered with slate at first floor level, a little reminiscent of the arrangement of the gardens and its galleries at Richmond Palace. There was also an extension, which is now lost, from the south side of the gallery, which led from the castle to a pew by the north chancel window of the adjacent parish church, which is called St Mary's Church, where there was found, quote, "a fair room with a chimney and a window into the said church, where the Duke sometimes used to hear service." Today, the very pretty gardens remain, and they are surrounded by a wall that once formed part of those galleries and that covered walkway. Now, when Henry and Anne stayed at Thornbury, they did so while receiving delegations from the nearby city of Bristol, which at the time was blighted by the plague, and Henry, of course, was paranoid about disease and perhaps quite rightly preferred the clean, fresh air at Thornbury. And when their visit was concluded, around a week or so later, they would head for their next destination, Acton Court, which of course, my friends, was the first place we focused on in our A to Z of Tudor places. It's amazing how it comes around. So if you haven't yet seen that, you may want to go back to the start of the series by following the link above. All right then, so many Tudor time travellers put Thornbury Castle on their list of places to visit and of course stay. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Thornbury Castle today is a luxurious hotel which has just undergone a significant, extensive renovation and refurbishment. And now you can choose from a range of opulent rooms, from deluxe to superior deluxe to suite, or indeed perhaps their most popular room, the pièce de résistance, the Henry VIII suite in the southwest tower, which was part of the original lodgings of the Duke of Buckingham and the bedroom in which Henry VIII stayed during his stay at Thornbury. Wow! Okay, but be warned, the hotel is certainly not for travellers who are on a budget, for a stay in the Henry VIII suite will cost you over £300 a night and rises significantly at certain times of the year, such as in the run-up to Christmas, when you could be paying £600 or £700 a night. Okay, sadly, the bedroom that once belonged to Eleanor Percy and therefore would have been used by Queen Anne Boleyn during her stay at Thornbury is no longer a bedroom. It is on the ground floor and has been converted into the hotel's restaurant. So the good news is you do not have to be a hotel guest to dine where Anne Boleyn once laid her head down at night. But what one of my favourite things to do, undoubtedly, is to book in for afternoon tea. And if you're lucky and you time your visit to coincide with warm and sunny weather, you can enjoy your afternoon tea, which in itself is an English ritual, in the picturesque gardens which are overlooked by the fabulous West Range and its spectacular facade. Honestly, guys, it's a real treat. So if you want to know more, of course, be sure to check out the hotel's website, and I'll put a link in the description below. And remember that Thornbury Castle is just one of over 70 locations covered in the book that I co-authored with Natalie Grueniger called In the Footsteps of Anne Boleyn. You can purchase a copy of that off Amazon, and again, links will be in the description associated with this video. But if you want to treat yourself, or perhaps buy your Tudor loving partner or friend that extra special gift, personally inscribed by me, then you can purchase a copy from my shop, and you just need to follow the link to do so. Okay, well, I will leave you pondering that, and until then, all that remains for me to say is, of course, happy time travelling.